My dad was arrested. Everyone believed he was guilty. My mom was too sick to fight back. Then my dad's boss moved into our house, said he came to help, but I didn't believe him, and when I started digging, I found a truth that changed everything. 15 years ago, long before my father joined the accounting firm. Before I was born, my mother dated a man named Richard Cole. They met in a microeconomics class at the University of Michigan. She was 21, he was 22. He was organized, ambitious, charming in a way that made professors trust him too quickly. She, Marina, was beautiful, clever, still recovering from her first major depressive episode and looking for someone who seemed unshakable. They dated for 4 years, moved in together their senior year. Richard proposed once, quietly. She never said yes. The breakup wasn't explosive, it was paperwork. Marina packed her books and moved back to her aunt's place after graduation. The only reason she gave him was this: "You always look at me like I'm a plan, not a person." After that, they never spoke again, or so she thought. 2 years later, Marina married my father. Alan, he worked at a different firm then. They had me, settled in a modest home. Alan handled the numbers. My mother stayed home for the first few years, and slowly, the old name faded. But Richard hadn't disappeared. He joined another accounting firm, the same one my father eventually transferred to. Their paths never crossed directly, but over time, Richard climbed quietly up the ranks, oversaw operations, managed systems, had access to employee records, including Alan's, including Marina's emergency contact. When my mother was hospitalized briefly after her father died, an event that pushed her into a long, depressive relapse. She listed Richard as a backup contact on one of the intake forms. She hadn't even realized it. He had left her a holiday card the year before. A polite, generic message. She didn't reply, but she remembered the return address, that name. So when the intake nurse asked, "Anyone else we can list?" she wrote him in. Richard never visited the hospital, but he knew. From that moment on, Richard followed us from a distance. He never reached out directly. He didn't need to. LinkedIn updates, professional networking circles, conference attendees lists, IRS filings. It wasn't difficult for a man in his position to keep tabs on the family he once thought was meant to be his. He watched as Alan got promoted, as we moved to a bigger house, as my mom returned to part-time work. He watched silently and waited. When Alan discovered discrepancies in a set of audit reports tied to foreign transactions, Richard was already preparing the fallback plan. He knew Alan would find them. He knew Alan wouldn't keep quiet. He didn't try to fix the records. He started building a trap. The night before my dad was arrested, Richard was at our house. Not inside, not invited. But his car was seen by a neighbor, parked 2 blocks down, at 11:43 p.m. I wouldn't know that detail until much later, when I pulled our old nanny cam footage from a forgotten cloud backup and found him. Standing outside the house, hands in pockets, staring at our front door. No bag, no call, no movement, just standing, waiting. That same night, my father recorded the memo on his smartwatch. The same watch Richard tried to destroy. The same one I found weeks later, hidden in his coat. And when the FBI arrived the next morning to arrest my dad, Richard didn't go to work. He went shopping, grocery bags, herbal tea, sleep meds. Then he came to our door, smiling, and said, "You don't have to go through this alone." He already had 3 suitcases in his car. Richard didn't take over overnight. He did it like an editor revising someone else's manuscript. Slowly, surgically, 1 page at a time. First, he became helpful. He reorganized the kitchen, labeled everything, told my mom she needed more omega-3 in her diet, and started ordering supplements in her name. Then he tackled the bills, asked for access to my dad's online banking, claiming he needed to freeze automatic payments. Told my mom he would clean it all up before debt collectors got involved. She gave him the passwords. Within 3 days, he had control over every account in the house. Utilities, mortgage, even the gas station loyalty card. He didn't make my mom choose him over my father. He made her choose survival over chaos. She stopped going to the mailbox. Richard picked up the mail every morning. She stopped checking voicemails. Richard filtered them before she listened. She stopped logging into her own laptop. Richard said hers was slow and set her up with a new one, already configured by him. He made her life easier by making sure she couldn't function without him. I started testing him. I left my dad's favorite hoodie on the couch one night. It was gone the next morning when I asked about it. Richard shrugged. Probably just got mixed into laundry. I'll check later. It never came back. The next week, I slipped a framed photo of me and Dad into the hallway near the staircase. Nothing big, just something small, visible. By dinner, it had been replaced with a landscape photo of a lake. He didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He erased, not violently, but efficiently, and always with a smile. One night, I walked into the living room and caught him sorting through a shoebox labeled Marina, college years. He wasn't hiding. He was flipping through the photos, slowly, methodically, studying the handwriting on the backs. So many memories, he said, holding up a photo of them in their early 20s. You look like her, you know? I took the box from him. He let me, but the look in his eyes said it all. I've known your mother longer than you have. The next morning, I heard my mom on the phone with a family friend. She was saying the words slowly, like she didn't quite believe them. Richard has really stepped up. I don't know what I would have done without him. He's stable. That word again, stable. That's what she had always wanted. That's what Dad couldn't give her during the worst years of her depression. Not because he didn't try, but because he did it his way, quietly, awkwardly, imperfectly. Richard made her feel like the world was back in order, because he made sure she didn't have to think for herself anymore. At school, the staff had begun treating me differently. My guidance counselor pulled me in for another check-in. She spoke gently, like I was made of glass. Richard mentioned, you're struggling to sleep, that you've been withdrawing. I stared at her. He's not my parent. She raised an eyebrow. He's listed as your education contact. Your mother signed it. Another signature. Another page rewritten. At home, Richard handed me a revised weekly schedule. Just to help you stay grounded, he said. Teens thrive on structure. It was color-coded. Every block of time accounted for. Sleep, school, meals. No screen time past 9 p.m. He posted it on the fridge, under a magnet that used to hold up one of Dad's old invoices. The kind I used to pretend were treasure maps when I was a kid. That night, I found a family photo album in the laundry room. It was open on the table, but pages were missing. When I confronted him, he didn't deny it. Some of the pictures were difficult for your mother. I set them aside for her well-being. I wanted to scream, they're not yours to touch, but Mom walked in just then, tired, holding her migraine pills, and said, he's right, let's not dig up the past. So I said nothing, but that night, I opened a new notebook. First page, I wrote, he's not replacing Dad, he's revising him, and no one's noticing but me. The first time I saw it in writing, it was on a sheet of school letterhead, a form titled Behavioral Concern Report. It had a checklist at the top. Someone had ticked the boxes for sudden mood shifts, obsessive thoughts, difficulty accepting reality. Underneath, in the section for contributing factors, someone had written father's incarceration, ongoing trauma, identity confusion, possible delusional fixation. The staff counselor handed it to me gently, like it was a Band-Aid. This is just to help us understand what support you might need. I asked who wrote it. She hesitated. It came from home. At dinner that night, I asked Mom directly, did you sign something giving Richard permission to speak to my school? She blinked, looked tired. Maybe. He said he'd help handle some paperwork. I thought it was just scheduling. I pushed her. Did you read what you signed? She didn't answer, just got up to take her pills. Richard cleared his throat. There's no reason to turn this into a confrontation. Kiddo, it's just coordination. Stop calling me that. What kiddo? You're not him. He smiled, like I'd just proved his point. The next day, I was pulled into the nurse's office. They asked if I'd been cutting, if I had suicidal thoughts, if I ever had violent urges at home. Where is this coming from, I asked. They looked down at the paperwork. Richard provided notes based on his observations. You've been irregular lately. That word. Irregular. Not sad, not angry, not tired. Irregular. Like I was a defect in the system he was trying to optimize. At home, I found my journal had been moved. I always kept it wedged behind a stack of sketchbooks on my shelf. No one could have seen it unless they were searching, but it was in the middle of my bed. The bookmark had been flipped 3 entries ahead. The entries he would have read included everything my suspicions, my backup plans, the cloud, folder name, Jake's involvement. I moved fast, deleted the cloud link, renamed the files, printed a physical transcript, and hid it behind the false panel in my closet wall. The one Dad built years ago as a secret birthday gift stash. The next day, the school therapist said I was exhibiting mild paranoia. She mentioned how sometimes stress can make teens think others are watching them. I almost laughed. They were watching. Richard had installed air quality sensors in my room. 3 little red blinking dots. He said they measured humidity. They weren't connected to any HVAC system. They were voice-activated recorders. I found the make and model by searching the serial number. Jake started avoiding me. He said his mom was under review at the firm, part of a quiet audit. Someone had reported her department for financial irregularities. He didn't say Richard's name. He didn't have to. My parents are talking about selling the house. He texted, I can't be part of this anymore. I'm sorry. I didn't blame him. That's how Richard operated. Quiet retaliation, precision damage, never loud, never traceable. 2 days later, I was suspended. They said I disrupted the classroom. A panic response during a writing prompt about justice and forgiveness. I hadn't said anything, just walked out. But Richard had already contacted the principal, filed the paperwork, signed off. As my emergency behavioral contact, the school board accepted it, because the signature matched the file my mom had already, unknowingly, signed weeks ago. At dinner, I told Mom I wanted to leave, go live with Grandma, just for a while. She looked at me like I'd slapped her. You don't feel safe here, no, I said. Not with him in the house, hell. Not with you letting him control everything. Richard didn't say anything. He didn't need to. The next morning, I woke up to find my bedroom emptied, my books, my sketch pads, even my stuffed animal from childhood, all boxed up, a note taped to my door. Your room is being deep cleaned for mold. You'll be on the basement sofa for now. R. And just like that, I was no longer a daughter in her home. I was a monitored subject in Richard's house, but he made one mistake. He thought I was finished. He thought he'd turned everyone against me. What he didn't know was that I still had Dad's watch, still had the transcript, still had people who owed my father their careers. And didn't forget that. He made me the problem. So now, I was going to become his. It started with little things, the framed photos on the bookshelf, one by one, replaced. First came a generic landscape, then an abstract print. Then a candid of Mom and Richard standing beside our front porch. Him holding a mug that used to be Dad's, the family calendar, cleared, birthdays gone, anniversaries unmarked. In their place, Richard's work dinners, Mom's therapy sessions, household maintenance days. I once asked Mom what day their wedding anniversary was. She hesitated. It's in March, right? March 14th. It used to be circled in red every year. Now it was blank. In Dad's old study, the one Richard had repurposed. The walls were repainted, dark gray. His briefcase was gone. His books replaced with binders labeled property and records. Even the scent was different. No more cedar and printer ink, just lemon disinfectant. I opened the filing cabinet once when Richard wasn't home. Empty. The entire drawer. Once packed with notes, drafts, receipts. Scrubbed clean, online. I tried looking up Dad's old firm blog, the one where he published financial literacy tips and budgeting strategies. He was proud of that. The archive had been deleted. LinkedIn, deactivated. The firm's Meet Our Team page used to include a profile of him. Now it's skipped from senior analyst, Kim, to compliance advisor, Richard Cole. No mention of my father, no past posts, no legacy, no digital footprint. I started calling his old coworkers. Most didn't answer. Some changed numbers. One, a woman named Ellen, picked up. She sounded nervous. I'm sorry. I can't talk about this. You understand, right? I asked if she believed my dad was guilty. She was quiet for a long time, then whispered he was going to blow the whistle. He said Richard was moving money under client accounts, said it would take the whole place down. I asked why she hadn't told anyone, because I'm a single mom with medical debt, and Richard now controls HR and payroll. If I speak, I lose everything. Then she hung up. In our hallway closet, I found an old external hard drive in a shoebox. I brought it to school, plugged it in at the library. It was password locked. I tried Dad's usual combinations. Third try, worked my birth date and the word audit. Inside folders, files, voice notes. A document titled Cover Trail V2. One PDF included a timeline. Every false transaction Richard had rerouted. Every fake client signature. Every paper trail that didn't match what was on the books. Attached were scanned pages from a notebook I recognized. The one Dad kept in the glove compartment of his car. But the notebook itself, gone. I checked Dad's Amazon order history. 2 months before the arrest, he bought 2 identical smartwatches, one delivered to our house, one to the firm's downtown office. The second order had been canceled the day before the arrest. That meant he suspected Richard would tamper with it. And still, he went forward. Back at home, I tried accessing the cloud backup again, blocked. Not just by parental controls, but through an IP lockout. Richard had added geofencing to the system. Any attempt to access it from outside his approved zone triggered an alert. My IP wasn't on the list. In the attic, I found another shoebox labeled receipts. Inside were photo printouts from years ago. Vacations, birthdays, school projects, but most had someone cut out, literally. I held one up to the light and saw the edges of what used to be Dad's face, scissored out cleanly, like he never stood beside us. Even our family memories were being edited. At dinner, I brought up a memory. Remember that night Dad made spaghetti at 1 a.m. because Mom couldn't sleep? Richard spoke first. That wasn't Alan. That was me. I remember because you spilled sauce on your spelling test. Mom smiled, like she couldn't tell if it was real or not, but it wasn't him. I knew it wasn't. I had the photo. Dad in a robe, me with red stains on my fingers, and still, Mom didn't correct him. He wasn't just trying to frame my father for a crime. He was replacing him. In our records, in our memories, in our mouths. He didn't want to bury Dad. He wanted to rewrite him. With himself as the version that never failed, never got arrested, never left. I made a decision that night. If no one else was going to fight for my father's name, I would, even if it meant destroying Richard's carefully written fiction, even if it meant burning the whole rewritten chapter down. The final straw came in the form of a calendar invite. Richard had set it on Mom's shared family planner, psych evaluation, facility intake prep. It was scheduled for the following Thursday at 10:30 a.m. My name was in the title. I wasn't told. I found it by accident. Checking the calendar to see when Mom had her next therapy appointment. There it was, quiet, in the background, like I didn't need to be informed, just processed. That night, I went into the garage and found the toolbox. The one Dad always kept under the workbench, second drawer, inside, under old screwdrivers and rusted nails, I found the envelope I'd seen him seal a month before his arrest. Addressed not to a court or a lawyer, but to Mr. Chen, one of Dad's longtime international clients. Inside a signed affidavit, typed and notarized, detailing the audit discrepancies Richard tried to hide, and at the bottom, a handwritten line if I disappear or if I'm silenced. This goes public. Alan, the envelope was dated 3 days before the FBI came. I contacted Mr. Chen through the encrypted email Dad had used for years. He responded within 3 hours. I always suspected Richard. He cut ties with me the day Alan was arrested. Can you prove the audit trail still exists? I asked. Yes, but only once. He agreed to log into the firm's backup server from a public IP address in Beijing. One time, one search. I would have 10 minutes to download what I needed. Meanwhile, I moved fast. I borrowed a laptop from the school library under a different student's login, used a VPN, logged into the session, screenshot everything, the fake transactions, Richard's login credentials, timestamps, document history showing who created what and when. Then I printed 3 sets, one for court, one for the press, and one I mailed to Grandma in an envelope labeled open, only if I disappear. I burned the USB afterward. Richard had a habit of checking devices when no one was looking. At home, I pretended everything was normal. I helped set the table. I complimented the soup. I even let him sit beside me during one of his boring family movie nights. He smiled more than usual. He thought I had given up. He thought the mold inspection, the basement sleeping arrangement, the cutoff from friends. It had worked. But he forgot who raised me. The morning of the evaluation, I was dressed and ready. Mom came downstairs, pale, avoiding my eyes. It's just a check-in, she said. Just a formality. I didn't answer. Richard held the car keys like it was a field trip. At the intake center, the staff led me into a beige room, padded chairs, one-sided glass. The woman in the lab coat asked me standard questions. Have you been sleeping? Eating? Do you hear voices? I answered them all calmly. Then I placed the sealed envelope on the table. Inside printouts of Richard's audit trail, the metadata from Dad's smartwatch recording, photos of Richard's fake document edits, and a notarized witness statement from Ellen, the former secretary who finally agreed to talk after I promised full anonymity and protection through Mr. Chen's law firm. The evaluator flipped through the pages. She didn't say anything, but I could tell. She saw enough. The police showed up at our house 2 days later with a search warrant. Richard was in the kitchen, stirring his coffee, when they came. They asked him about the audit discrepancies, the falsified signatures, the calendar metadata, the erased LinkedIn logs, the education documents he had filled out under someone else's name. He said it was all a misunderstanding. Then they mentioned the audio. His face changed. Richard was arrested at 6:07 p.m., almost exactly 3 weeks to the minute after my father had been taken. He didn't resist, but as they put the cuffs on him, he turned to my mom and said, calmly, I took better care of you than he ever did. You know that. She didn't answer. She just looked away. At the station, I handed over everything else. Dad's watch, the hard copy ledger from the attic, the photo of Richard standing outside our house the night before the arrest, time-stamped by the nanny cam cloud server. The prosecutor didn't hesitate. The case was reopened. My dad's name was removed from the federal watch list, and the firm began internal investigations. And my mother, she didn't speak for 3 days. Then she asked if we could visit Grandma. I didn't feel like I'd won. It didn't feel like victory, just like I had stopped something terrible from finishing what it started. I wasn't even sure if my family could ever go back to what it was, but I knew one thing: Richard would never rewrite us again. Richard was indicted on 17 counts of fraud, identity misrepresentation, and witness intimidation. The FBI added a count of perjury after they recovered surveillance metadata from my dad's car, proving Richard had entered and tampered with evidence long before the arrest. Digital forensics authenticated every audio file I submitted. Despite the manipulated timestamps, the device sync history and network logs aligned with Dad's original calendar settings, which he had set one day ahead, ever since Mom's hospitalization. The court accepted the full chain of events. They cleared my dad's record. Dad didn't come home right away. He was released on bail. Quietly, no press conference, no reunion at the front door. He stayed with his sister for 3 weeks. I think part of him didn't know how to come back. I didn't either. The house wasn't the same. The couch still smelled like Richard's cologne. Mom started therapy again. Real therapy. With a new doctor. Not one Richard had chosen. She didn't say much in the beginning, but I saw her crying quietly over a photo of us from 3 years ago. Before everything. I thought I was protecting you, she whispered once, but I wasn't protecting either of us. I was hiding. I didn't say anything. Some things don't need forgiveness. They just need time. Richard pled guilty. Not because he admitted fault, but because the evidence was airtight. The audit trails, the digital logins, the voice recording, the handwritten note from my dad, labeled, "If you're reading this, I've already lost control of the situation." He got 25 years. No parole for the first 10. Court-mandated psychiatric treatment. The firm lost over $3 million to his manipulation. 2 department heads resigned. 3 senior staff were placed under federal review for enabling false documentation. Ellen, the secretary who finally testified, was placed in witness protection for a time, not because Richard was dangerous, but because people who had protected him were angry that she flipped. She told me later, "I should have spoken sooner, but I had a son, and no savings. My school never apologized." They quietly removed Richard's name from my file. The counselor was reassigned. The social workers stopped making eye contact. They said I could apply to reinstate my academic record, but I didn't bother. I took my GED instead. Jake and I didn't talk for a while. His mom resigned from the firm during the audit. He moved schools. Sent me a letter 2 months later with one sentence: "You were right." "I'm sorry I left when it got hard." I wrote back, "You weren't the only one who left." Dad came back eventually. We didn't hug at the door. We sat on the porch in silence for 10 minutes. Then he said, "I should have seen it sooner. I was so busy proving I was right. I forgot to make sure you were safe." I wasn't either. I told him. He didn't argue, just nodded, the way dads do when they know it's too late to fix something, but not too late to stay. Now, I speak for others, at advocacy panels, online webinars, school workshops. I tell them how predators don't always scream or stalk. Sometimes they show up with tea. Sometimes they tell you your grief makes you irrational. Sometimes they offer help while holding the knife behind their back. My mother's testimony at sentencing was the last time we saw Richard. She told the court, he didn't just steal money. He stole our sense of what was real. And that was the truth. Because justice doesn't give you your old life back. It gives you the freedom to build a new one. From ruins, yes, but with your own hands this time. We still keep Dad's watch in a box near the fireplace. Fully charged, fully updated, the recording backed up in 5 places. Not because we're afraid anymore, but because truth is something you don't just find. You protect it.